Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the Derbyshire Dales series. The Dales contain some of the most beautiful British scenery. It's a magnificent area. Here's one of its 109 civil parishes. Welcome back to the Derbyshire Dales again, people. Now, today I've brought you to a place that's got a building very similar to the one that we mentioned in Carver. Only this time we can actually see it. And actually this one is probably a lot more historic, to be honest with you. That right there is Cressbrook Mill, and it's part of the parish of Litton. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like, and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. Litton, Hillside Farm. I don't know about you, but I am really enjoying my time in the Derbyshire Dales right now. We've seen some fabulous stuff in this district of late, but today I reckon we're in one of the best so far. This is Litton, and boy does this have some stuff to talk about. Litton Parish contains two main settlements. One is the village itself, located close to the A623, about a mile away from Tideswell. It's up in the hills above the valley of the River Wye, which we last met at Millersdale. One thing we didn't really touch on in Millersdale is how it got its name. The clue is in the name though. There were mills on the river, and big ones at that. Litton had its own, but perhaps the largest and most well known belonged to the other settlement in the parish, Cressbrook. First built by Sir Richard Arkwright and then rebuilt and extended later, Cressbrook produced high quality cotton for lacemaking, using the power of the River Wye to do so. Before the mills, Cressbrook simply did not exist. As for Litton, lead mining was the main source of employment for the locals. We'll touch on both industries as we journey around these villages, one high in the Derbyshire Hills, the other in a steep-sided valley. Oh, and we'll also be admiring a well-known beauty spot in this one too. Like I said, there's a lot here. Let's go. Cressbrook Mill is the most historically important building in Litton Parish. Now converted into apartments, this was once an industrial behemoth whose purpose was to spin cotton. It's the second mill to stand on this site, the original having been built by Sir Richard Arkwright in 1779. After it burnt down, this was erected in 1787. In 1814, a large extension was added, commissioned by William Newton, or the Minstrel of the Peak, as we know him better. Behind it all are some much older cottages. They were for orphans brought as child apprentices from London to work in the mill. So that's the mill, and it is quite the impressive building. But equally impressive as well is the little village that goes with it. Going along with the mill, you actually have Cressbrook Village. So now we're going to go up the hill, and when I say hill, trust me, this is a very steep hill, into the village itself, which is arguably maybe more interesting than that itself. The mill is the reason why Cressbrook Village exists. Before the Enclosure Act of 1762, Cressbrook could not be found on any map. It began as a cluster of buildings in the immediate vicinity of the mill, constructed mainly for its workers. When William Newton's 1814 extension came along, that's when things really started to change in this valley. Newton's extension was for a company of cotton spinners called J.L. Phillips and Brother. This was the beginning of the mill's 19th century heyday, when it was producing high-quality cotton for lace making. The mill owner at that time was Henry McConnell. His workforce objected to the low quality of the housing around the mill, and so he took it upon himself to build a model village on the hillside above the valley. That village would become Cressbrook, and the first houses were built in the late 1830s. When the mill went bankrupt in 1965, Cressbrook went from being a private mill estate to the public village it is today. Let's go and check it out. Well, let me tell you folks, it's quite a long way up in the hills this above Cressbrook Mill, but it's well worth coming to, if just for this view. Take a look at this. Isn't that absolutely gorgeous? I'll just tilt the camera up a little bit because you're getting more of the road there than you are of the scenery. Fabulous, isn't it? Right, we'll have a little walk around Cressbrook and then we'll go to Litton. We begin on Middle Row, and straight away you can tell you're in a model village because all the houses are built in the same style. In the centre of Middle Row is the village hall, simply known as the Cressbrook. This began life as a social club in 1902, added to the village by Mary Worthington, the daughter of Henry McConnell. Outside it is a bus stop, which caught me a bit by surprise given all these steep gradients. The number 173 braves it though on its journey between Tideswell and Bakewell. There's a phone box here too. With no phone, it acts these days as an information point. Of course, like everywhere else, Cressbrook sent men to war, 67 in fact in World War I. This memorial is for the 7 who never made it back. All of them would have worked in the mill. 36 also served in World War II, but mercifully they all returned. Now, given that Cressbrook is no longer housing mill workers, some buildings have lost their former uses. Trinity House is a good example. This used to be a chapel and one of the last ever built by the Primitive Methodists. The society originally rented a cottage from the Cressbrook Mill Company until they were finally able to buy land and erect this chapel in 1928. The rest of this walk basically forms a loop around the remaining houses and the green before heading up the steep hillside back to the start. Fun fact for all my Australian viewers out there. David Cannon McConnell, who was related to the owner of Cressbrook Mill, emigrated to Australia in 1840. There, in 1841, he established the Cressbrook Homestead, named of course after this very village. Today, that homestead gives its name to the modern-day localities of Cressbrook and Lower Cressbrook, both in Queensland. Let me know if any of you guys know those places. Okay, it's hill time. Yeah, it's definitely much easier going downhill than it is up, but unfortunately my car is parked at the top of this hill, so you know, I kind of got to do it. Now, we're not quite done with Cressbrook because once we found the car, we got to take it towards the church, which is between Cressbrook and Litton. We'll catch that on the way to the main village, and yeah, hopefully I'll still be in one piece when I get to the top of this hill. Thankfully, on a piece of flatter ground as you leave the village is the Church of St John the Evangelist. There was once a school nearby too. In 1895, according to Kelly's directory of that year, Cressbrook had nothing more than just a mission church connected with Tideswell's Cathedral of the Peak. That church would eventually become this after being enlarged by Mary Worthington in 1902. In 1904, Mary would die less than 2 years after her church refurbishment was completed. The McConnells, by the way, lived at Cressbrook Hall, which Mary inherited from her father in 1885. So this is Litton, and if cotton milling was the catalyst for the growth of Cressbrook, it was lead mining that did the trick for this place. Litton was first recognised as a village in the late 18th century. Then it was just a handful of houses on the edge of Tideswell. It's grown a bit since then. Our first landmark here is the village hall. This looks older than it actually is. It was built in 1907 and originally it was a working men's club. Now it's the heart of this tight-knit community. Owned by the Parish Council, Litton Village Hall is where meetings are held and community groups convene regularly. Heading westwards now, this is Christ Church on the road to Tideswell. This is a modern church built in 1928 by the architect W.H.R. Blacking in a traditional manner using local materials. The only exception is the Georgian baluster type font that was brought from somewhere else. Around the back of the church is a playing field, an open space which acts as Litton's war memorial. In 1938, Maud Helen Penfold gifted the field to Litton in memory of all those lost in World War I. The gates were erected in 2016 during the war's centenary years, their addition being funded by the National Lottery. Heading back into the village now, next we have the Red Lion, one of two pubs within Litton's boundaries. This one is 18th century and built from the local White Peak limestone. When Litton's well dressing ceremony takes place every June, the Red Lion holds a beer festival at the same time. In front of the pub is part of the village green, which features some old stocks, ideally placed if you ask me. I wonder how many have staggered from the pub into these. Overlooking those is the Litton C of E aided primary school. It's a small school, but it's Grade 2 listed, having been built in 1865. The school's architect was a Mr. H. Cockbain of Manchester. Note the stylish clock, I thought that was a standout feature myself. For those children who attend the school from further afield, a bus stops right outside it. It's the same one that serves Cressbrook, the 173. Note here that the wide main street runs between two sections of the green. We'll stay on this side first of all, before making our way back down the other side shortly. That way we can catch more. Next up on this side is a phone box, which I thought initially was empty, but it wasn't. I hope you're ready for this bit, folks. So I thought initially this was like a few bits of history of the village, but it's actually not. It's a series of very, very bad jokes. I'll give you a couple of examples. Here we go, look. Conjunctivitis.com. That's a sight for sore eyes. I see they've invented a new game called Quiet Tennis. It's just like normal tennis, but without the racket. So whoever stole my copy of Microsoft Office, I will find you. You have my word. Why should you never trust theirs? They're always up to something. I phoned the local Ramblers Club today, but the bloke who answered just went on and on and on. And you know what, I could go on and on and on, but I think I've probably done enough damage, haven't I? This next section is all about housing, because from this point eastwards, most of Litton is residential. It has just over 130 dwellings inhabited by people with a wide range of occupations these days. A lot have lived here for generations, but Litton has recently seen an influx of younger, newer residents and families. It's a good thing then that there's a playground up here to accommodate them. In addition, the primary school has been expanded to accommodate the many new children who have come to Litton recently. Let's make our way back down the other side now and see what's there. Next up we have an old chapel. Built in 1834 and originally a Wesleyan building, this is now used by all Methodists. While we're on the subject of nonconformism, Litton was, in 1628, the birthplace of William Bagshaw. He was a celebrated nonconformist divine, often referred to in literature as the Apostle of the Peak. This side of the road also has a small B&B. That would be the house on your screen now. Litton also has some self-catering accommodation too. The most well known is Litton Fields Barn on the road out of the village towards the A623, which can cater for up to 12 people. As well as the village hall, an important meeting spot for the locals is the village shop, which also includes a post office. This was founded in 1999 and it occupies an old blacksmith's forge. Because it's a central hub of activity, it's the ideal place for a parish notice board. Knock it off that list, everyone. If you go a little further up the road here, you'll pass another house called the Old Shop, suggesting there was one here before the current one. Whatever the case, our last landmark is the village cross on that immaculately kept village green. The obelisk is 19th century, but the gritstone base is likely earlier. Okay, so I've just taken a perch on the steps of the cross here. I've been walking around all morning, so yeah, I definitely need to take the weight off my feet a little bit, especially with all the hills, including that one in Cressbrook, which was quite steep. Now, we are not quite done with Litton just yet. There are two more things I want to cover in this particular episode. One of them is actually not in Litton Parish, but most people that live here know all about it because you can see it from the road out. It's something called Peter's Stone. We'll go there next And then to finish with, we'll head to a pub which is right on the border with Tideswell. And I know a lot of people who watched the Tideswell episode expected to see this particular pub in that episode. It's not in Tideswell, it's actually in Litton. Let's go and check both of those things out to finish. So if you leave Litton to the northeast, you're driving along this road here, which runs to the A623. And the A623, you can just about see it in the distance over there. Up there, you see. That's heading towards the likes of Watergrove Mine in Fullow and Grindlow and places like that. In the other direction, Hazelbadge, Bradwell and Tideswell are all over there. This road basically runs into the 623, and that's effectively where you can get to from this road. But if you're driving along here, you're more than likely going to be, shall we say, attracted to the scenery that's to the right hand side. And here it is, and isn't it beautiful? All of this is within the parish of Wardlow and not Litton, because like I said, you're on the parish boundary here. Now, draw your attention, if I can, to the stone that's in the middle of your shot here. This here, it stands on its own. It's like a promontory that sticks up from the rest of the landscape. That is Peter's Rock, or Peter's Stone. And even though it's in Wardlow and not in Litton, most people think it is in Litton because it's, you know, you can see it from this road. And people that live around here place a lot of importance on this stone, and this is why. In my opinion, Peter's Rock, or Peter's Stone, is one of the best natural geological rock formations anywhere in the Dales. Made of limestone, its shape is reminiscent of St. Peter's Dome in the Vatican, which is how it gets its name. Alternatively, the formation is sometimes called Pulpit Rock due to its visual similarity. It also goes by a third name, Gibbet Rock, because it was the location of the last public gibbeting in 1815. It's perched above the steep slopes of the gorgeous Cressbrook Dale, and what a spectacular view you get of both from here. Aren't the Derbyshire Dales just awesome? Isn't it absolutely beautiful? There's no wonder why people love to walk around the Derbyshire Dales, because this is the kind of scenery that you can expect to see. On a glorious summer's day like today, it's just well worth the effort. Now, even though I've not climbed up on top of Peter's Stone there, on Peter's Rock, you can do it. You can see there are a couple of people on it. There's two guys there, look, that are on it, and there's a couple more people down here which are just chilling on a rock, another rock down there. You can get to it, but probably not from this particular footpath. I think you have to be on a different footpath to do it, because as you've seen, there's a massive dip down there, down Cressbrook Dale, and yeah, I don't think you can safely get across that from here. I don't know, but yeah, footpath map will help you out with that one if you're looking to get onto Peter's Rock or Peter's Stone, whatever you want to call it. So there you go. That's that. Now, to finish this episode off, we're going to head back to the road, and we're going to go towards Tideswell, because if you remember, a few minutes ago I told you there's a pub which some people in Tideswell thought was actually in it. It's not, it's in Litton. We'll go there to finish this all off. So now we're on the A623 and we're heading west towards the junction for Tideswell. Just before you get to it, on the right hand side, there are two landmarks of note, both in Litton Parish. One of them is a coach company called Andrews, who've been in business for 91 years, taking people on holidays across the country and beyond. Their website is linked below. The company is located right next to the Anchor Inn, which has recently joined the growing stable of Peak District pubs operated by Rick Ellison. This whole area is nicknamed Four Lane Ends. And with Litton in the books, it was time to move on to the next one. Just a mile up the road in the direction of Stony Middleton is the next parish, one which has a very interesting tale to tell involving a cat, which you used to be able to see inside another pub. Join me there soon to see what that's all about. Thanks for watching this video, folks. Don't forget to like this episode if you haven't already. It really makes a difference with YouTube. If you're new here, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us a share too if you've got friends who'd like it. You can find all the links to my social media accounts below, as well as my Buy Me a Coffee page where you can donate to the channel. Also, if you've enjoyed this episode, have a look at some more videos in this series. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and I'm out.